Welcome to episode 77 of the Filmumentaries podcast. This is Jamie Benning talking to you here from my little reading nook here at home in outer London. It's 25th of May 2023, a date that you may recognise. This is the second episode of the month, and this is another very special episode. More on that in a moment. Firstly, if this is the first time you've listened to the podcast, welcome. You have about an hour or so of film history chat ahead of you. Please do check out some or all of the previous 76 episodes. They're all great if you love behind the scenes chat, and each of them gives you a unique insight into the film industry and the roles within, including directors, writers, editors, visual effects, special effects artists, sound designers, behind the scenes documentarians. There's lots to choose from and there's lots to learn. If you are a regular listener, thanks as always for your continued support. If any of you do like my work, and this is work, this doesn't make itself, then please visit patreon.com/Jamie Benning. There are several tiers to choose from with different perks and merch too. Thanks to those of you that are supporting the podcast. Got another 2 new patrons this month just gone. So yeah, great to have you on board and being part of the Filmumentaries family. Talking of merch, you can also support the podcast by buying some goodies, including Filmumentaries mugs, t-shirts, bags, bottles, and even socks. Also t-shirts with the inside Jaws and inside Jabbers posters on them that Pete Starling designed for me those years ago. I just think they're great designs. There's going to be a few more, hopefully. I'm going to have a chat with Pete. He's done some great artwork over the years, and I think with his artwork and my kind of reach, it could be a good combo, me putting them on my shop. It helped promote his stuff and my stuff. And you get some cool stuff to boot. Why not buy one of these things for your next convention? I've said in the intro for the last few episodes that nobody has bought any merch, and then I got contacted by a follower on Patreon the other day to say that he bought some. So I wonder why I hadn't received a notification of a purchase. And when I looked on the site, I saw that in fact I had sold 7 items to several people. So that's exciting. Please check out the shop at filmumentaries.creator-spring.com. I'll post the links to both the Patreon and the shop in the links and the show notes. I've also got an Etsy shop, by the way. If you look for Filmumentaries on Etsy, I do sell some of the Jabba the Hutt, inside Jabba the Hutt posters there as well. So do check that out. I did sell one recently, actually, to somebody who was going to meet up with the Jabba guys and wanted all of their autographs. And, it is the only accurate rendering of their puppeteering in that. The one from the official documentary all those years ago was a bit of a nonsense, that diagram. So we created this one. Anyway, going to be adding a few more designs, as I said, to the shop. So that'll be both the Etsy and the spring.com one. So watch this space, or rather that space. Okay, so for this episode, number 77, cool number, I have a guest host in the shape of my co-author on our new Return of the Jedi Unauthorized Timeline book, Justin Berger. And Justin is here with me now. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Jamie.
So the conversation you're about to hear is our interview with Jedi's co-producer Jim Bloom about his time working on the film. We're so happy that he's been able to write a wonderful introduction for the book. And today, the 25th of May, the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, was supposed to be the release day of the book. Unfortunately, we had a bit of an issue with Amazon, but I think, we've found positivity in this. And Justin, let's just, if you don't mind, just telling people what happened with the Amazon end of things.
Yeah, I mean, self-publishing, can be problematic in regards to you don't have a large company overseeing everything. We're dealing with Amazon, and as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, Amazon actually did not get us our final proofs in time. There were delays in shipping. So we were not actually going to get the proofs until after the book had come out. And we just decided, we can't put a book out that we haven't finalized and confirmed as being, as best as it could be. So, for everybody's sake, we just decided to push it back a week to give us time to get those final proofs and to just kind of make sure everything is as good as it can be.
Yeah. And that's the thing, we've got the digital version of the book that we've been editing and working on, and that's one thing. But given that we're only making a physical version of the book, we wanted to make sure, as Justin said, that we'd had it in our hands, we'd had a good look at it, we were happy with the quality of it, that everything lined up on the cover, for instance, just that it was a product that we were, happy to put out into the world. So we are talking about delaying it until June the 1st. Fingers crossed Amazon will get the proofs to us in time to be able to do that. It doesn't really affect anything, it's 1 week delay. it doesn't really affect anything, from our side, other than we are able now to put a few more things in that we've come across in the interim. And Justin has been working on the formatting some more as well. So ultimately, this week's delay is going to make it a much better book. We've gone from being disappointed just, a day or two ago to now being, actually, this is really good because now we can change this, we can do that. We were kind of forcing ourselves to get it out on that date. And, it's a bit of a mixed blessing, I guess, in a way. Amazon have messed things up for us, but it has meant that we're going to get something even better out to you guys. So there will be 3 versions of the book. Justin, you're much better at explaining this than I am. That's your job now.
Yeah, there's going to be 3 versions of the book. They're all the same content. All it is different cover styles where you've got a hardcover and a soft cover. And basically it's a different price point as well. So you've got the hardcover full color book, which is going to be, the highest priced book due to the fact that it's a hardcover. And really good quality printing. That's going to be your highest tier for the collectors, for the people who really want a solid, beautiful looking book. The other books are just as beautiful. They're just not hardcovers. There's a soft cover full color that, like I said, has the same contents as the hardcover. It's just a little more affordable due to the fact that it's a soft cover instead of the hardcover. And the I think the paper quality or printing is slightly less just because it offers a little bit of a reduction in price. And then the final one is going to be another soft cover with a black and white interior. The reason we did this is just simply we want everybody to be able to get the book. A hardcover full color book is going to be a bit pricey, and not everyone is going to want to pay for that, but we wanted everybody at every level of income, or if somebody is just wanting the book but is like, oh, I just can't justify dropping that money on the hardcover. Well, we got you covered, no pun intended, but we do have those options available, and all 3 will be available at the release date on June 1st, and you'll be able to pick which one you want. You could pick multiple versions. If you're a completist collector and you want to get all 3, by all means go for it, but we just wanted to give everybody the opportunity to get this book and experience it, because we're really excited about it. We're really happy with it. We think it turned out great. If it's going to be even better now that we have this added time. Just to clarify, there was nothing wrong with the book that we were going to put out on the 25th. It was a great book, but just having that extra time, we took that opportunity to say, you know what, let's add a few more call sheets. Let's add a few more pictures. Let's, just do these little bells and whistles to kind of give it a little more oomph, if you will, and just make it a better book for everybody. So we're really happy with both versions, but the new version is definitely going to be something I think everyone's going to really love and appreciate and enjoy. And like I said, June 1st is going to be the release date. It's just 1 week later, and let everybody know. Tell your friends, tell your family, and can't wait for you guys to get it. We can't wait to get it. We still have not got our hardcover proofs or softcover proofs for that matter, so it's going to be nice to hold the physical book in our hands and kind of flip through it, and just we wanted to really have that so we can just kind of look at it and make sure that it's the best quality it can be, and not release something that might have a mistake or two, and then we would have to change that. So we're doing this for you, but
yeah, and like I've said on a couple of podcasts recently, Justin and I have done a bit of a round of podcasts. We want people to use this as a resource, this book. I certainly will be using it as a resource for future projects, because it's the only place you can find all of these dates collated in one place in chronological order. And you can see, as Jim Bloom kind of describes in his intro in the book, that it sort of strips back all the glamour and you see the bare bones of movie production, the mechanics of it. And it's going to be sitting right up on my shelf, just to the right to me here, next to the Rinsler books, probably next to the Art of Return of the Jedi, and it's going to fit right in. So here's our conversation with Jim Bloom. Justin had a bit of an internet problem at one point, so I think he dips out and comes back. And when you interview Jim about Return of the Jedi, or anything, in fact, you don't get much of a chance to say too much, because Jim is such a good talker. You give him a couple of questions and off he goes. But thanks to Jim and to you, Justin, for your time as always. And I'll be back at the end for a bit more jabbering on. Jim, thanks for joining us. It's so great that you've been able to write this introduction for our book. Let's talk a little bit about Return of the Jedi, your time on Return of the Jedi. From our previous interview, I know that you were involved on The Empire Strikes Back, having worked with George on American Graffiti before. And what was your first kind of task once you were engaged for Return of the Jedi, and where did that take you?
Well, the first task was, we had a rough idea of we didn't have a screenplay, but we had a short 5-page breakdown. We were starting on Jabba's planet, and then eventually winding up on the forest planet on Endor. So starting on Tatooine and then going to Endor, but the mandate was to find those locations in the United States and not overseas because the politics of the times were changing. And it didn't seem to be as safe at that point to be taking a British crew, into the wilds of Tunisia to go shoot for a while and whatnot. And George decided, let's try and make it here in the States. So that was really the first issue. And so it was like, okay, well, where are we going to find these locations, or can we find them in the United States? So, basically as soon as I started, I launched this recce, which is a location scout in U.S. parlance, but a recce in English, parlance for English crews, to find the location for Jabba's barge, which was, okay, where are we going to find Tunisia? What's it going to look like? And then where are we going to find the woods for the Ewoks? Because we knew there were going to be these Ewok characters, these forest-dwelling characters. We didn't know exactly what they were going to look like yet. But we sort of had an idea, it's like, oh, it's the land of the teddy bears, is sort of the idea behind it. And so Robert and Norman and I launched off on this great location scout that I, remember to this day how beautiful and wonderful it was. And we really covered a huge amount of area. The basic thrust of the trip was, starting in, Death Valley, Nevada, areas around Las Vegas, because you're bringing in a big motion picture crew. You not only have to find a great location, you also have to find a place to house them and supply them. You can't really be out in the middle of nowhere. We weren't that small of a unit.
Did you have a sense of the size of the crew at that point?
Yeah, well, we sort of knew we were going to be 100, 150 people. It was a Star Wars movie. We had done Empire. We kind of knew what was involved. And when you make these big science fiction films, you generally have larger, art departments, prop departments, costume departments, slightly production departments, all of the, camera, everything's bigger. You're shooting 2 and 3 cameras, you're shooting VistaVision cameras, you've got ILM people down there joining you for the visual effects shots. You've got creatures, and the creatures need to be dressed, and it's not like you're putting them in blue jeans and t-shirts. They've all got their creature outfits that they're wearing, particularly the Ewoks. The Ewoks were going to have we needed 30 or 40 Ewok costumes from close up to background. And then you've got your stormtroopers and all the other people involved. Then you've got your principal characters, of which there were always, particularly in Jabba's barge, we had everybody. We had them all. And then you've got the robotics people for R2 and the other people for C-3PO and the other robotics and all the other creatures that surrounded Jabba, his whole group. Of those who were on the barge, and then all the stunt men. You had stunt doubles for everybody. So we knew it was going to be a big unit. So that was part of it. But the first mandate was to try and find something visually that worked. And then, okay, this works. How far are we, So eventually we settled on Buttercup Valley outside of Yuma, which was about, a 25-minute ride outside of Yuma. So that's not too bad. So you're losing an hour of travel time coming and going every day, so that's not unreasonable. I've worked on movies where, we traveled much further to get to certain locations, and it's expensive. It becomes a consideration.
And I guess you're also trying to find places for people to stay that are of a quality that the cast has now become accustomed to as well.
Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, the I'm forgetting the name of the motel in Yuma. But we were sort of on the tail end of what they call the, I'm going to get the expression wrong. There's an expression for people in the States who live in the cold Midwestern states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Chicago. I think they're called snowbirds. And in the wintertime, the retirees will head south to Arizona, southern, Palm Springs, where the weather's really nice and, lovely. It's like 75, 80 degrees, very little rain, really pleasant place to spend your winter as opposed to, sub-zero blizzard, freezing cold, like Finse in Norway, it's like, let's get out of here, let's go to the south. So we were on the tail end of that season, so the one hotel that we stayed in, which fortunately was large enough basically to house the whole crew, we just took over the whole place. So it was okay, it wasn't great. It's not, it's interesting, there are a lot, I guess the hotel business has changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
Since the 80s, and now there are all these, beautiful places everywhere, or often, in places. It's really expanded as a service industry.
Yeah. You expect more these days, definitely.
Yeah. So in Yuma, and then I have to tell you, up in Crescent City and Smith River, which is where we were shooting, we had part of the crew we had the crew all over because there wasn't enough up there. So we had technical crew in Crescent City, and they're small, like they were really, motor, the traditional motor motels. You drive up, park your car, get out and walk to your room, which is either on the ground level or one level up. And we must have had 3 or 4 of those in Crescent City. And then we did have the nicer place that we had for the above the line people, our cast, producers, directors, your key people, was in Smith River, which is really quite pretty because it was a smallish motel and it looked over the Smith River, which looked over the Pacific Ocean. And it was quite beautiful because everybody had a really lovely room. Some of us stayed in, because we were there for quite a few weeks because of the second unit afterwards and whatnot, stayed in mobile homes that they had on the property, because they had a few mobile homes on the property that they would rent to people who would stay for longer periods. So that was nice. So I sort of had a bedroom and a kitchen and a living room, and I had never really lived in a motorhome before, so to speak, or a trailer. It was like trailer park, trailer park living. So that was kind of interesting. And so they stayed there, and all the Ewoks went up to Brookings, Oregon, because we were right near the California-Oregon border. And we put all the Ewoks up there, and they were all little people who came from all over the country, because we had this massive casting effort to gather all these little people together, because you couldn't put kids in the costumes. And, for lots of reasons, with shooting with children and whatnot, and being during the school year. So we launched this effort, and I forget the exact number, but we must have had like 40 or 50 little people, all together. And it was the greatest, one of the largest groupings of little people for a movie since The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And it was fun. There were all these stories out of The Wizard of Oz about, little people orgies and, stuff like that. And, it's all BS, I'm sure, But, it was really nice for them, because there were, as you would expect, anytime you have any gathering of people, it's just like any movie shoot. There are, affairs, romances, new things that turn into marriages. All those things happened.
So
it was great.
Jim, when you were doing the casting, did these people know that they were going to be in a Star Wars movie, or was it kind of top secret? We need little people for something, we can't really tell you what.
I think that we were casting them for a movie, and we didn't tell them exactly what it was until we found all the people that we wanted to be in it. And then everyone was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which they were all happy to do. And, it was pretty obvious to people, like, word gets out, you're the one leaking the word, you're not working on the movie, you're gone. And I think that people were interested in doing that. So it became obvious at some point what we were doing, and, I don't exactly remember how we handled that part of the casting. I'm sure it was, I would have taken the attitude that I just had with you guys. Just tell them it's a movie. Tell them it's Blue Harvest. We're doing a horror movie. We're going to put them in little costumes.
Where did that come from? Do you remember who came up with the idea?
I did. Blue Harvest is mine. It's all me. because it occurred to me very quickly as we went location scouting that, it's kind of like dumb. You kind of go in and say, oh, hi, here comes Star Wars. We're making the third sequel. It's, the first two of the most, made more money than any motion picture of all time. They're like 1 and 2 or 1 and I forget what the numbers were, in the top 10 box office grossing movie. And, we want to rent your XYZ, and it's like, duh. It's like, yeah, the price just went up 300%.
Exactly.
That was part of it. And the other part of it is that because Star Wars and Empire were so successful, people were actually going through the dumpsters at ILM looking for stuff at night. There were all these dumpster divers, and they weren't looking for food. They were looking for storyboards and props. And, the security of what we were doing became very tight. We were shredding everything and, locking the dumpsters, and there were night guards out and things like that. And so for those reasons, we didn't want, the thing that we needed to avoid, because I knew how avid the fans were, is I didn't want the fans on location. It would have been hard to keep them out of Buttercup Valley, where we were shooting Jabba's Barge. We started there. And it would have been kind of dangerous for them to be, climbing through the forest to get to the location. We didn't want people up there taking pictures, and publishing stuff. You can imagine how it was. So I said, we need to come up. Yeah, go ahead.
We've seen those shots, haven't we, of like Mark Hamill and I think Billy D. Williams signing stuff for people through the chain link fence in Yuma, people turning up on quad bikes and things. But I think also over here in the UK, I think The Sun famously posted a picture, an aerial photograph of that Yuma set a few weeks beforehand.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can only do your best, can't you, with those things? I mean, obviously security's tightened up a lot since then.
Absolutely. No, it's very true. And so for that, it was the fans, but it was also the financial aspect, which is that if people knew that we were Star Wars, all the prices would have doubled, and it's sort of natural. And I said, we need a false flag. And I said, and I need to come up with something that's like really boring. I mean, something that when I tell you what the name of it is, you're going to go, oh. It's like a shrug.
Yeah.
It's not like, movie titles are supposed to be exciting. They have active verbs in it, like don't open that door, right? Or, The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars, or what was Revenge of the Jedi, that stuff that's supposed to get your interest. And I said, well, I need the exact opposite of that. And I thought, and I said, well, okay. And then I said, well, what about, I think there's a movie called Red Harvest. It was an Italian movie. I have to look back on that. And I said, well, Red Harvest, that's kind of interesting because it sounds kind of bloody, but I don't want to inspire. So what about Blue Harvest? It's like, what the fuck is Blue Harvest? Really, it's like, what is it? It's like, I don't know. It doesn't inspire you to. It's like, what is it? It doesn't even make sense, And I said, oh, that's good. Now I'm moving in the right direction. And then I came up with, horror beyond imagination. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It's just like
it sounds like a bad B movie or something.
Exactly. It sounds like a bad B movie. Horror beyond imagination.
And who knew it would have this whole new life outside of Return of the Jedi now? With Family Guy episodes and people wearing caps with it on and t-shirts. You cannot go to a Star Wars celebration without seeing 100 people
wearing
at least 100 people wearing a Blue Harvest t-shirt or cap. Yeah,
I still have mine, I'm sure, somewhere.
Yeah. For people, I was going to say, for people not watching the video, Jim is wearing his cap, his hat,
well, there you go. I wish I were.
Underpants,
But we did do Blue Harvest rain gear.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. And if you can still find this stuff at auction, and it's very pricey, just like the Empire snow outfit, that people wore is like, it's like goes up at auction for like $10,000 now or something, and people have it in their, in their personal collections wrapped in plexiglass frames, and mine is there. I have, I sold mine a few years ago, and I offered to buy it back from the guy who bought it, and he was not interested in selling it to me. But then I saw how he was keeping it, and it was wrapped up in a beautiful plexiglass frame, with a full jacket. And
it found a good home.
It's exactly the way I felt, which is if I bought it back, it would be stuck back in the closet again, wrapped in plastic, and the way it was. It wasn't doing much, at least somebody's getting some enjoyment out of it.
True. Justin, You had a question about the Revenge of the Jedi title change, didn't you? You wanted to
Yeah,
ask him.
I'd listened to your interview with Jamie earlier, and in your introduction, you talk about revenge to return, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious how that all came about because I know there's all these different stories about who came up with it, where it happened. Some people have said, "Oh, it's because of Wrath of Khan," and they wanted it to be different from that, and then, you know, I'm just curious, since you were boots on the ground there, like what was the story behind the change from Revenge of the Jedi to Return of the Jedi?
The thing that I remember, and I don't know if I was one of many voices, which is possible, but I remember saying to George one day, I said, I was thinking about the title, and revenge is not something that a Jedi would want. Jedis are not revengeful. That's not who they are in their makeup. And I said, I think there's a bit of a conflict there. And he went, yeah, well, we all do our George,
Yeah,
our bad George imitations. Well, I should say we do it out of fondness because
yeah,
I
of
like the
course.
guy. And and then he thought about it and he went, oh yeah, that's interesting idea, Jim. Let me think about that. And then we changed it. He changed it to Return of the Jedi. That's
I
that's that's my
Yeah.
take on what happened because I specifically remember having the conversation. It doesn't mean that after I said that maybe how ideas float in the
Hmm.
universe.
Hmm.
It could have been me. Somebody else could have said it. I'm not quite sure, but I remember that we changed it to Return of the Jedi from Revenge of the Jedi. I mean, I still have some of my old Revenge of the Jedi sweatshirts and T-shirts and
Do you know, just last week or 2 weeks ago, I mentioned about Revenge of the Jedi on a tweet on
yeah.
Twitter, and this woman said, "Oh, my dad used to bring me paper back from Elstree with the Revenge of the Jedi letterhead on it, just as scrap paper for me to draw on as a child. He was a rigger or something
Oh yeah.
on the movie." And I said, "Oh, that's amazing. Have you still got some?" She said, "Yeah, I'll send you some in the post."
Oh,
So
cool.
she just sent me a stack of this
Oh,
paper.
really? Oh, that's
Yeah, yeah,
wonderful.
it's very cool.
That's
So you put your
amazing.
kid through college with that now.
Well, maybe, yeah, maybe I should have mentioned that to her.
What are the other stories about how the name changed? I'm not even I don't keep
The
track of
one
all the.
that I've heard was it was because Wrath of Khan was going to be released around the same time, or I think maybe a year earlier, or whatever. That there was a
Yeah.
conflict there between or Star Trek was going to be called something else besides Wrath of Khan, and it was too close to Revenge, so they
Yeah.
didn't want to confuse people, so they decided to change it. But that doesn't really sound like. I
That
mean,
doesn't sound
maybe.
like. Yeah, I've
But
never heard
I don't
anything about
think
that.
George Lucas would give a crap what the Star Trek movie is called. He's going to call his movie
Yeah.
what he wants to call it. So,
I,
but I
I
mean,
also heard the story about it being Return at one point, then Revenge, and then it reverting back to Return.
No, it was never started as Return. It
Mm,
was always Revenge. Revenge is a better title, but it's not
yeah,
something that
it is.
it's just not something that yeah, Darth Vader might seek revenge or the Emperor might, but
Mm.
a real Jedi Knight wouldn't seek revenge for something.
yeah, no,
And
I
again,
think
like
it was
Blue
a good,
Harvest, those
a good
items are more
choice.
coveted now
Yeah, right,
than the.
exactly.
I was at Kevin Pike's house a few months back, up in the mountains in California, and of course he's got the Revenge of the Jedi poster there that he got from back in the day, and
Oh, cool.
yeah, yeah, they're great items because there's something tantalizing about the kind of alternate universe version of these movies we
Right.
sort of invent in our mind.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about the scouting
Yes.
around the US and trying to find these locations. Can you give us a sense of what it was like to spend a lot of time with Robert Watts and Norman Reynolds? I've had the benefit of interviewing Robert, and he's a great guy, fun guy to be around. Norman hasn't had as much kind of. I mean, he sadly passed away. We've dedicated our book to him,
I
actually.
thought it was very
Um,
nice. I saw that when I looked at the book.
yeah,
That was a very nice thing to do.
his work is incredible and it's inspired so many people, continues to do so. But I never really felt like I got the measure of the man because he wasn't really often interviewed in the documentaries. What was he like to work with?
It was part of the great fun of the trip was being with Norman and Robert because I'm
Hmm.
traveling around with these two Welshmen, and who were constantly teasing each other and chatting and having fun. And when you're on a location scout, it's not just the scouting part of it, but it's having 2 or 3 meals a day with them every day for 2 or 3 weeks while you're traveling around and meeting all these Americans. And they both would joke about the Americans, and they both put on their American accents all the time, and which was always, it was always funny to hear these Brits, do their, John Wayne accents, and from their sort of American movie accents. But Norman he was a brilliant production designer. He was just great. His work was just wonderful, and as he was a real human being. He was a lovely guy, and I just enjoyed working with him immensely. Incredibly artistic, good ideas. Knew his craft so well. The great thing about production designers is that they like to show directors how to shoot something. It's like you don't need to build 4 walls. Sometimes you only need 2. And so it was a pleasure for them to work with. And Norman was sort of that way. He could talk to a director and say, well, I think we can sell it. We only need to build this much. And because the stuff that we're building is not cheap. Sometimes it's very expensive. And because he had worked on Star Wars and worked on Empire, he knew the world. He knew the techniques. He knew how to create all these different things, and he knew how to use the visual effects, to make it all work. He had worked long enough with Richard and Dennis and Joe and all the guys that he had a good feeling for all of that, and he also understood how to make things work for Ben Burt as well, the sound effects guy. Is like, oh, let's have some steam coming out of this or that, and he had a great sense for knowing that the way the Star Wars universe is a used universe. It's not a brand new. The Emperor's stuff might be kind of brand new and shining, but the rest of it is kind of cracked and wrinkled and dented and rusted, and it gives that that look that you want from, oh, this place has been lived in. So he was I was crazy about Norman. He's one of my favorite guys. And Robert and I became great friends when we started working on Empire, and he and I having become friendly, we would laugh together all the time about things, which was great, because he again, Robert was I learned a lot from Robert, because he was such a talented and seasoned production executive, and as my career sort of advanced, when I had ideas about how to do things, I would call Robert up and say, well, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that, or and he would say, oh yeah, let's do this, do that, and he would call me from time to time and say, what about this, what about that, or what's the way to solve these problems? So it was great, great working with both of them. It was really wonderful. When we, Robert and I would eat together all the time, every night when we were on location in Yuma and up in Crescent City.
It's when you really get to know somebody, isn't it? When you're, you say, spending those meal times with them and every moment in between. Yeah.
And then, and you kind of develop a shorthand with people that I had with Robert, that, and the shorthand is that you can look at somebody and you can talk to them by how you move your eyes, or, look, you just move your eyes over there, and they know that, they're supposed to look over there. It's that kind of a, that kind of a relationship stuff. So, and he, whenever, when he also got to know my wife quite well, and he would stay with us when he would come to California, he would stay at the house with us, because if we had room for him, he would come and stay, because it was always fun to have him, and he was a great house guest, and we were just good buddies. So traveling with the two of them was a great treat, and again, there was a sense of kind of Lucasfilm history that Robert appreciated and understood, that he knew all the people, and he could see the expansion of Lucasfilm from Star Wars to Empire, and then Empire to Jedi, and how the company grew, and into this much bigger organization, and all of these corporate people came into the company, and and he and I would often joke all the time, and not quite remind them, but he would do it more than I would. I guess maybe because he was in London and wasn't over here that much, but he had a tendency to remind all of them that the only reason you're here is because we're making good movies. It's like, don't forget that. The only reason you have toys to sell is because we're creating them in the movies. The only reason you've got this big licensing department and all these new marketing and licensing and legal and all these people are coming in, is because, these good movies are being made. So it's like, not quite like shut up and get out of the way, but it's just sort of a gentle reminder of,
Yeah.
where all of this began and why it's happening. So I always laughed about that because, oftentimes in these situations when like the corporate types, the suits as they're like to be called, because I've been one, show up, it's like they kind of strut, they're kind of, puffed out roosters.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert was, would occasionally, in a kind of polite British way, remind them that, it's really about the movies. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. So, that was, he and I would laugh about that sort of stuff.
One of the other things I like, that we've tried to kind of get across in the book as well is that in the time that Jedi was made, 1981, 1982, released in 83, it's a very different world to what we know now. A very analog world where you're communicating with each other over telex. You're sending dailies off to be developed and checking them the next morning. I mean, it's a very different time that I don't think people fully appreciate, given the fact that the film still stands up so well. There's films that were made around that time that were in the top 5 of the charts that do not look anywhere near as good as Return of the Jedi did. What you kind of described just then, that you've got this group of incredible filmmakers, but can you talk a little bit about the sort of complexities of your job and of Jedi? Because Jedi, of course, was this huge. There was huge expectation on you as a crew.
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you a story that I didn't write in the introduction, but I think I maybe told it to you once before. Was that years later there was it was a Jedi anniversary of some sort, and I was invited to the Corte Madera Theater in Marin because they were showing Jedi again, or it could have been Empire. I forget what it was, but afterwards they did a Q&A. And I was sitting on the stage. It was me and Phil Tippett and Dennis Muren and Joe Johnston and Ben Burt. And somebody from the audience said, how do you make these movies so they're so great? And I said, you hire these 5 guys. And that's really the answer. It's like, how do you do great stuff? You work with great people. And that was really the key, which is why is Jedi so good? Well, look at the talent that was amassed to work on this particular movie. And to keep pushing the envelope of tricks that they were developing at ILM, and then you're finally working with a kind of a veteran crew of people who would now, this is their 3rd movie together working. And so they understood what it was that they were doing. They weren't all sort of being assembled for one picture, but you had a core group of filmmakers who were coming together. And when you look back on it, really the only odd man out in that group from some perspective, who was learning was Richard Marquand, the director, because he didn't have the background that all the other people did in making visual effects movies. Because making visual effects movies it's a very different animal, than just going out and shooting a live action piece in every way. And the films have to be, architecturally designed and built and then shot and finished. There's a real process to doing it, and by that point there was a group of people who kind of knew how to go about doing it, and you had great people who were doing it. It was really a wonderful crew. You got Joe and Ralph McQuarrie and Ken Ralston and Richard Edlund and Bruce Nicholson in the optical department and Peter Coran back in the animation, and Lorne and Steve Gawley are back in the model shop building all the models and whatnot. And and Norman's such a great production designer, and Aggie Rogers did a wonderful job on all the costuming. And you just got this great, incredibly talented people together. It's really a trick. You start with a great story and great people, and you let them do their work. You try to, as I like to say, it's get out of the way.
Yeah,
it always
always get
to me. Hold on. It always seemed to me that if you watch, you watch all those behind the scenes documentaries, George Lucas is really pushing people out of their comfort zone, and I just kind of want to ask you about that, about how George would push people to work beyond what they thought they were even capable of. I mean, there's the Dennis Muren part in Empire where the tauntaun running across, and he's just like, I don't know how to do this, and Lucas is like, oh, you'll figure it out, and he just leaves, and then Dennis Muren figures it out an hour later or whatever it is. But did you see a lot of that where George is like pushing people outside of the comfort zone to really make them come up with these new ideas or new ways to do things that they might have otherwise not even attempted because it just seemed impossible?
Absolutely. It's very true. I used to see him do it all the time. If something wasn't working, something wasn't good enough, he had a new idea, he would sort of challenge them to, you think about it. Let's figure out a way how to do it. And when you're when you're working with those guys, when you're working with the Normans and the Dennises and the Richards and Joe and Phil and all of these guys, it's like, okay, let's go bang our heads together and come up with a way to do it. I mean, it's interesting. I had a conversation with somebody else about this, and it's movies in Hollywood were made at the studios for so many years that when you needed something, you picked up the phone and you called the department that took care of that to supply it to you. And on the most common level, it would be, we need a widget, call the prop department, and they'll have a teamster drive the widget over to the set. Okay? So it was like somebody else was doing it for you. But Lucasfilm and a lot of us, and a lot of the Brits too, and I'll get back to that in a second, is that we need a widget. Where are we going to get one? It's like, well, we better go find one. We better design one. We better create one. We better make a new one, or we need a widget plus or something. There was no phone. There was no studio that you could call to do it for you. You had to go do it yourself. And that was part of what ILM was about. You need to do it, go create it, figure out a way to make it happen. And so when you say a lot of the other movies that came out at the time were not as imaginative, they weren't as inventive, they didn't look as good, I think that, I would sort of say that there was a certain ethic in making these films where you're dealing with people who, if we need to do it, let's just figure out a way to go do it. We'll do it. We'll, create it. We're not going to call let a bunch of people in the prop department figure it out. We're going to do it. And I think that was part of ILM, and I think that was part of the ethic of making, the Star Wars movies. We're, just going to go. We're going to create these departments and make the stuff ourselves. When we needed to create all the costumes for Jabba's palace and Jabba's barge, well, there was no. We had to create a creature shop, that we created out of, you create out of whole cloth. It's not like something you fall back on. You just kind of find the people and try and give them the time and money that they need to come up with all this stuff. So it's sort of a different style of filmmaking. And I think that because getting back to the way the Brits work, Americans are used to going on location in the United States, and mostly in and around California, because it's cheaper, it's closer, whatever. And that started in the 30s and 40s. The Brits, on the other hand, their backyard is the whole world, because they're not a lot. You want to go shoot Robin Hood, we'll go make it in England. But if you want to go do something else, we've got to go somewhere else to make it. Whether we go to Africa or we go to Southeast Asia, so they're far more used to traveling. And in that traveling, they're used to dealing with and working around the problems that you arise when you're in a foreign country, and how you come up with stuff that may not be there. You're speaking foreign languages, different cultures, everything's different. So they're much more comfortable in that kind of environment. I always used to, somebody would I remember Phil Kaufman wanted me to produce a movie, and he thought we wanted to go to Kathmandu. And I said, well, great, we'll take a British crew. And he said, well, why don't you take an American crew? I said, because the Brits are used to working there. They don't have a problem, going out for dinner and eating, Nepalese food. You take the Americans there, they'll all be on the toilets all day long. Their constitutions are just not built for that kind of a work environment. And I think the same thing is, still probably true to this day. It's like you want to go somewhere, crazy, take the people there who know how to do it. Don't take the people who want to go back to the Holiday Inn at night, and have a hamburger.
Yeah, I do see these as British movies as much as I see them as American movies because,
Yeah, well,
right down, probably 12 miles as the crow flies is Elstree Studios from my house here.
Absolutely.
And it's British crews, it's all the craftspeople being involved. Talking about the effects on, because of course you've famously had the task of moving ILM from LA up to Northern California during The Empire Strikes Back. Now for Return of the Jedi, they're trying to ramp up once more. And I think that ended up being the most complex optical movie created at the time by some way. There's that famous shot, SB-19, where I think there's 70 odd elements all crossing each other, and the effects guys have worked out all the trajectories and stuff. Do you remember the first time you saw that effects work and your reaction to it?
You mean that I saw it on screen, or what the challenges were in
well, both really.
Both in story. Well, it was we always knew that every leap was exponential from Star Wars to Empire, and then Empire to Jedi, and what we could and what we couldn't do, and what they did on Star Wars. It was interesting on Star Wars. I'm trying to think about on Star Wars. We they used motion control cameras on Star Wars, and I had worked on Close Encounters, so I was very familiar with that. And then on Empire, we took it to the next level, and built our own cameras, which occasionally worked. That's like the joke of the Empire Flex camera, up in Norway, which never quite worked. It was always the old Technicolor workhorse, that old, built like this heavy 50, 60 pound original three-strip camera. But so again, moving from Empire to Jedi, the challenge was always to make it bigger, greater, more interesting, because the audiences were becoming more mature, and they were getting used to all of this. So the stuff became the design of the work. Particularly, I would say in Jedi, the complexities ramp up were in the space battles, which is mostly, how many elements can we cram into a shot? How many different elements can we put in? And then also the speeder bike sequence in the woods, because that was always like, well, how the fuck are we going to do this? It's like, and it took quite a bit of time to figure it all out. I mean, the other thing about effects work is when you shoot live action stuff, you can go out and turn the camera on. Nowadays with digital, you just let it run. All right, take one, okay, do it again. When it was film, you would cut, reset, do it again, because film was expensive and you had to process it and develop it. The thing about visual effects work is that the idea is that, you look at the storyboards, they have how many frames are there? It's a 24 frame shot, it's a 48 frame shot, because that's how you know how long it's going to take to create it, by how many frames it is. And everything is sort of down to the frame. And so that's why often with certain sequences, it was we had storyboards or animatics that we could use in place, so we would know, oh, this is a 36 frame shot. This is a 48 frame shot. We know exactly how many frames needed to be photographed, because that's what they did. They only photographed that many frames. They know that we've got 48 frames to get this, particular craft from here to there. Foreground to background, background to foreground, left to right, whatever it would be. However it's crossing in the frame, or something's being chased, or when the rockets are being fired and different explosions and whatnot. So it all had to be exactly timed out to the frame, and so that imposes a certain structure on your work, about how to do it, how to create it. It's not quite free form. You can make adjustments to it after you do it, but you've got this strong pattern, that you have to fit into, and it was a challenge, and it was George knowing I need to push, I need to if we want to make this better, we've got to do more stuff, and it's also what what the guys wanted to do, because they didn't want to. None of the guys ever wanted to sit on their laurels. They wanted to make something better and greater than they had done before.
Do you remember Black Friday, as they called it at the time? I think November 22nd, 1982, when 40 effects shots were dropped from the movie.
I don't remember that, because I left the picture in like June and July of '82.
Okay.
So I wasn't around. Somebody else was running ILM, and I had been asked to produce another movie. And I didn't think that they needed me on the tail end of Jedi, because Howard was producing, and Mickey Herman and Lewis were staying on for post-production. Tom Smith was running ILM, and all those things that I did on Empire, I wasn't, I was like an extra body, and I had a chance to go produce this great science fiction movie that Hal Barwood and Matthew Robbins had written. So I remember I went to George and said, "Do you mind if I leave?" And he said, "If it's okay with Howard, it's okay with me." And I spoke to Howard, and Howard said, "Yeah, well, I think we got it covered. Yeah, if you've got a chance to go produce a movie that we never made, unfortunately, that's
That's the
did I ever tell you about that movie?
You did,
Yeah, okay.
you did, yeah. It's always tantalising, isn't it, when those movies aren't made? But just sort of bringing it back around.
But mention that to me. So what happened on that day? They dropped 40. From which sequence did they drop the shots from?
As the entry says in our book here, George Lucas throws out nearly 100 effects shots and 4 months of VFX work. Ken Ralston goes out and gets drunk with most of the effects crew. Ralston says, "George threw out 40 of my shots and 30 to 40 of Richard's. It added up to about 250 ships we shot from scenes we'd been working on. All this material was just tossed out." But that's George just trying to be economical with the storytelling, I guess. There's that famous, to me anyway, scene where he talks about the sail barge. Even though we took months to build this thing, it's only on screen for a few seconds. I'm not here to show off the work that I've done. I'm telling a story here. And I guess it's the same with the effect shots. They just weren't needed when they made certain cuts and certain, changes to crafting the story.
So I would say to you, from a story point of view, what sequence was that from? Who was fighting in space that they threw that work out? Was that stuff with like Lando and
I guess it was
Chewie
the end battle,
or something?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to remember Jedi. I'm a little fuzzy on it now. You guys would know better than I would. You've got all the stuff happening at Endor, right? Mm-hmm. And so you've got them trying to blow up the generator. Mm-hmm. Isn't that it? While there's a battle going on in space.
Mm-hmm. And so it would have been all the space battle stuff.
And who are the hero? Who's in space? Isn't it? It's not Luke.
So Lando's up there with Nine Numb and Admiral Akbar up there. Yeah.
Well, you just answered the question why it hit
General
the floor.
Medine. I suppose a lot of his stuff was cut.
You talked to George about movies, and the thing that he taught me more than anything was story. And story is who are our characters and what are they going through and who do we care about and who are we following. And if I were to look at the characters of the Star Wars universe, Lando's in the top 6 or 7, right? Mm-hmm. But he's not 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Mm. It's Luke, Leia, and Han Solo are 1, 2, and 3, mm-hmm. right? Followed by C-3PO and R2-D2, and Chewie, 4, mm-hmm. 5, and 6. And who's number 7? Lando. He doesn't even get introduced to Act 2 or 3 of The Empire Strikes Back. So it's like, so why did that stuff wind up on the floor? It's like, because it was just probably battle stuff. That would be my guess without specifically knowing what the shots were. Because what you cared about is what was happening down on the planet with our heroes.
What I liked about one of the things I liked about your introduction in our book is how you talk about you adore the characters just as much as anyone. And if you ever saw a kid wearing a T-shirt with Star Wars in it, you'd have a conversation, not necessarily giving away your role, but just trying to, just understand the audience point of view as well.
Yeah, it's fun. I still enjoy it. I see people with Star Wars stuff on. I go, oh, cool.
Yeah,
cool
I
shirt.
do it. I always say nice T-shirt.
Yeah, right.
And I have no reason to other than I love the films. But
I wanted to ask you, but maybe this isn't the place to do it, about your experience at that Star Wars European celebration.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it was. I can say, and then I can cut it out. Yeah, I went to one before over here, and to be honest with you, I lasted about an hour and a half there. It was about 10 years ago. It was just too many people, and it was a lot of queuing and everything. But this time, I sound very smug now, but ILM gave me like a VIP pass because I was hosting a panel for them about the Andor TV series. So I interviewed the special effects and the visual effects heads on that, and 1,000 people turned up for this Q&A.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I mean, nothing to do with me. It's all to do with Star Wars, of course, but that went really well. And, it was a great atmosphere. It was just a love-in, really, because everybody there is because they love Star Wars, whether they love the original movies but not the prequels, or they love the prequels but not the sequels, or the TV but not the cartoons. There was something there for everybody. And what was great is seeing people of your age, of my kids' age, all dressed up, all doing, just doing their bit for the love of the movies. And
that's great.
Yeah, I mean, for some people, I'm sure it was a bit of a religious experience with, Ewan McGregor turning up, and Anthony Daniels was there, and Warwick Davis was there. And,
oh, cool.
Yeah, there was a 40th anniversary Jedi panel there. Billy D turned up because he was also plugging his book, which is coming out soon.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, it was good. It was good fun. But, like I say, I benefited from just jumping all the queues for the panels and things like that.
Right.
So,
that's great.
As a general customer, I don't think I would have liked it because you can just spend 3 days queuing, basically.
When isn't there some international one coming up in the next few years?
Japan, in 2 years.
Japan,
yeah.
in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've never been to one, Jamie. And
you should.
Yeah, I know. I have to think
got to do it.
I'm not sure who to call anymore. Everybody's, we're all dying.
Well, I know the press guys. I know the head of publicity now.
Oh, you do? For Lucasfilm or for ILM?
It's for ILM and Skywalker Sound, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, let them know to give me a call.
Do you know what? I'm going to write here on my pad to email.
Yeah, if they want to fly me to Japan.
One of the things I'd like to talk to you about as well, of course, bringing it back to our book. What was it like looking through our book? It's a reference book. It's not like competing with J.W. Rinzler's, tome on Return of the Jedi. It's a reference book, but it kind of strips things back, doesn't it? And what do you make of it?
Well, for me, I really enjoy it because I used to see those call sheets, and reports and letters and memos and drawings and sketches, and it in a really wonderful way, it takes you, back down to that, what I think I said in my introduction was it takes you back to this sort of skeletal analog version of what making the movie was about. So I think that's great. It would really be nice if Lucasfilm would give you guys access to the full,
yes, that would be amazing.
Have you tried to do that with them or?
No, to be honest, we haven't. The thing is, if they say no, then you can't do your project, and
okay, fine.
What we kind of want to do is show that we can do something like this,
right.
And then they say, oh, these guys know what they're doing.
Yeah, right.
And maybe it leads them. That's how it's kind of worked out for me with the podcast and the things that I'm hopefully doing for them in the future. But
sure, yeah, no, but I enjoyed that immensely. It's great to see all of that, all of that material, see all the photographs. It's also wonderful. It's a great, behind the scenes chronology. I mean, great job, Justin. I enjoyed the one on Empire too. I wish I would have known about that before you published it. I would have been happy.
Oh, that would have been amazing. Well, you know what?
I don't. Yeah,
we've talked about doing a revised version of Empire, the Empire one. So we might come back and pick your brain on that.
Sure. Well, please do. It was, I mean, in some ways, I'm closer to Empire than I am to Jedi. For lots of different reasons. But
Well, you're in it for a start, Jim.
well, yeah, exactly. I'm in it. That. But I was much more creatively involved in Empire than I was in Jedi. I think maybe because I left Jedi early. I didn't stay on from, the last 9 or 10 months of the show, so I wasn't, going to dailies every day, and I wasn't running ILM. I had other people were doing that at that point. So that's why Empire. And then in Empire, it was also, coming on to this movie and starting, we started basically at the same time, but Empire was much more of a build from, moving ILM and, creating the movie and being on location in Norway. Although I did all that location work on Jedi Up in the Woods, with the second unit that Dave Tomlin was directing and all. But
he's another character, Dave, isn't he? That everyone in the industry knew him and knew of him and knew his work and knew he was this formidable character. But all I get, the only sense I get of Dave is that you wouldn't mess with him. He'd be there with his cowboy hat and his loudhailer. But
Dave is a lovely guy. He's just, he's a great guy. I think that for some reason that there were assistant directors who, carry this reputation of being, rough and tough, and they're not that way. They're just big people. Dave had a great sense of humor, and the thing that Dave loved to do more than anything was get out on the golf course.
Oh, really?
He played golf every chance he had up in Crescent City and in Yuma. Anytime there was a day off, he was out on the course swinging the clubs around. And no, I got along with him very well. The thing about professionals that always has been my experience is that they have very strong bullshit detectors. And if you're not, if you're professional, and you care about the movie and you know what you're talking about, you get along very well with these people. I sort of became the same way as time went by. I had a very strong bullshit detector. When people are full of shit, it's like, get me out of here. I don't have time for this.
Oh yeah.
It's not worth it. But when people are straightforward and honest, and it's like Jamie. It's like talking to you guys and Justin, what you did with the book. You guys are, you're genuine. You care about it, and you're knowledgeable, and you know stuff. And when I talk to you, I learn things that I never, I didn't know that, because you've spoken to so many people, you become the source of knowledge, about something. And so that was the same thing I found about Tomlin. It was just Dave was just this big guy, and he knew how to run a movie set.
Herding cats.
And so I didn't, herding cats, exactly.
It's interesting though. You talk about, you've got your trajectory through the movie, and all those people that go by on the credits have got theirs. But we've noticed actually that we can't do pre-orders on the book because it's being Amazon self-published. But what we have done is set up a site where people can register their interest, and then on the day of release, we'll send them an email saying where they can buy the book. And several members of crew have signed up.
Oh, good.
Because,
nice.
Like I say, they've got their experience, but they might not understand what was happening on the periphery. And,
right.
Like you said, you finished in June of 82. And then you've got all those, right up to today, we're taking this, so you'll see when the 40th anniversary was and the screenings. And in fact, I was speaking to Mickey Herman and Rose Dugnan yesterday.
Oh, really?
Because there's a bit of a ILM Return of the Jedi get together
on Saturday. This coming Saturday, absolutely.
Yes, and Rose is taking a photo for me of everybody that we're going to put as the last entry in the book.
Oh, great! Oh, that's wonderful. Great.
Yeah.
Is Mickey,
you're not going?
I am going.
Oh, you are going. Good.
Yeah, I will be there. Is Mickey going to be there?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
great.
I interviewed Mickey just about last week. Yeah.
Oh, good. Lovely.
Yeah.
Mickey's great.
Yeah, she is.
She's full of stories. I bet you she's just packed with stories.
She is. I also interviewed Peter Coran last week.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah, he was telling me some fun stuff.
Yeah, Peter's a great guy.
Interesting career.
So Mickey knows the redwoods from Santa Cruz to the Oregon border because she saw all of them by helicopter.
That's right. Yeah, she said she was in planes, trains, helicopters. Yeah,
everything. She was
time
Mickey,
of her life.
It was like Louis Friedman was my man in Yuma, and Mickey was my woman in the redwoods. Mickey was the location sort of supervisor unit manager for the Redwoods, and Lewis was the unit manager for Yuma, Arizona. For Lewis, it's like, what a challenge. It's like, okay, we started building 6 months. He had to spend 6 months before we finally started shooting, with all the construction guys. Do you ever talk to Lewis about Jedi?
No.
Oh, you have to
No.
reach out to Lewis. Oh, Lewis is a character. He was somebody that Howard brought in. When Howard came on to Jedi, he brought Lewis with him as sort of a production assistant.
Right, yeah.
But he wasn't. He was, and now he became a very, pretty well regarded, line producer. But he would be fun to talk. If you want to talk to Lewis, let me know. I'll send you his.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Lewis is a character. He's kind of. He's kind of very formal in a way when he talks to people and stuff, and it's like, take it easy, Lewis, lighten up. It's like, I mean, I could talk to him that way because I've known him forever, but I think it's just part of his, people are different. Some people are,
Jim, I was
looser than other people.
I was gonna tell you this story. I don't know if you've heard it. There's a collector named Gus Lopez, and he collects, Star Wars memorabilia, props, and everything. But anyways, apparently in the Redwoods,
I've heard of him.
Yeah, on the Endor set, the bunker set, there was the doors that would shut or whatever. Apparently, there was a farmer in that area that was using them for a sheep pen, and some Star Wars fan was driving by or something.
I did hear this story. Yeah,
and had seen them and was like, "Wait a minute, those look familiar." And then it turned out that he had found them in the woods and was using them for a sheep pen. And then Gus, I think, ended up buying them from him or something. But I just love little stories like that.
That's cool. That's funny.
How much stuff did you guys leave behind when you left after shooting?
I don't. My take is that all the stuff was, if it wasn't needed, it was thrown away. It was just like, sent to the trash. Taken to the wherever the dump was, and dumped off. We didn't. I don't think we left very much behind. Probably not, because you wouldn't find anything in the woods, because those woods have been obliterated. That was something that, I remember something that affected me that, years later, that somebody said, I said, did you drive on Highway 101 from Crescent City to Smith River, and did you drove right by where we shot? There's this curtain of redwood trees. Nope, all gone. Cut down, all just, taken out. And it was such a remarkably beautiful forest that we walked through the first time that we were in it. It was just, it really was a religious experience for me going into that, the first time that Mickey and this guy, Lenny Fike, showed it to us. So there's like a film festival up in Humboldt County in early June. Did you hear about this?
No.
And they I'm sitting on it. They're doing this Zoom panel, and they asked me to come sit on the Zoom panel. But they found Lenny Fike, and Lenny was our location manager who found that Redwoods location. And so, if you would like to talk to him, I can get his email address for you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Because Lenny would probably know about this Gus Lopez story, Justin. Because he was he was like our man up there. He's like when movie companies show to town, they usually find some local guy who knows everybody, who, can open all the doors that they wouldn't be able. Oh yeah, I know so-and-so, I'll give him a call. We'll take care of this. I mean, Lenny was the guy who knew the people at the Miller Relum Redwood Company who worked it out, who didn't care if we went into their old growth forest and did our work on Jedi. Had we not found that, I don't know where we would have gone, because the national parks and state parks wouldn't have anything to do with us. Yeah, stay on the path. Stay on the path. That was stay on the path. It's like, we're making a movie. What do you mean stay on the path? What do you mean? What do you mean you want to set a squib in this tree bark? No, it's like, good luck.
Well, at least you guys captured.
Was like, well,
at least you guys captured those forests on film for preservation. If nothing else.
Yes. Yeah. Well, some of those forests they're still around, and I'm sure there's still some private stands that are owned by some of the lumber companies. Like way back, far, far away. Maybe, it was interesting is when we were scouting, and Mickey would remember this, was that, we went to Pacific Lumber Company because they were afraid we were going to find, they didn't even want to admit that they had old growth stands still because they didn't want people knowing where they were, because they didn't want people getting in their way of their logging plans. And it was sort of an interesting time back then, 1980, because there was the eco movement was gaining force, moving forward, against the corporate, the corporate people who, these were assets to the corporation, that they wanted to, log and make money from, and it was just. It was just a shame that all that stuff just got cut down, because these trees are just amazing. Have you been out here to see the redwoods around the bay? Well, if you come to San Francisco, there's beautiful areas right here.
I got very close a couple of times, and I regret that I didn't do it. I was in Oregon just last year, and unfortunately I didn't get a day off. I was going to drive up and.
Oh, right.
Check it out. And I've been to San Francisco a couple of times and didn't have the time.
Well, there's a beautiful stand just outside of San Francisco, but you need to make a reservation to get there. It's called Muir Woods, and it's a pretty spectacular place. And they've done a nice job of creating paths through the woods. And then there are some other woods south of Eureka by about 45 minutes called Rockefeller Forest that you can just wander around.
Nice.
You just get off the road and just walk through the woods, and it's pretty amazing. The trees are
make your Ewok sounds.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. But I'm digressing like I always do.
It's a kind of obvious question, and I generally avoid asking these questions in the podcast. But given that we're talking specifically about one film, and we're talking about our book as well, what do you think about the kind of longevity of Return of the Jedi? And did you have any sense that it would be something we'd be talking about after 40 years when you were working on it?
I didn't. I don't think I ever really thought about it then. I think I was maybe too young to think about it from that perspective.
Because you were 25 when you were working on Empire, right? And then
I started on Empire in 78. I was 25 when I started on Empire. So I was 28 when I started on Jedi. If Jedi, I was born in 52. I started in 80, but September 27, going on 28, when I started on Jedi. And I was pretty. I guess at that age I didn't think too much about. Well, is this going to be around in 40 years? I think that kind of thinking tends to be in reverse as opposed to forward. I was much younger, and now that I'm going on 71 this year, I'm a lot more kind of reflective, looking backwards. I guess that comes with maturing. You kind of look backwards on things, and you gain different perspectives. No, I think it's pretty great. I think one of the only reasons it's really happened, though, is that they've been able to keep the franchise alive, and that Disney took it over and really kind of blew it up.
Jim, it made my month, my start of the year when we spoke before, when we had those 2 interviews. It's made my year that you've been able to do the introduction for our book and talk to us tonight. And me and Justin, we're not the most demonstrative people, but we are geeking out right now.
Oh, well, guys, it's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for the introduction. It really means a lot, and I think I feel like it really adds a lot to the book. So
good. Well, you guys you guys are very kind. I've never written an introduction before, and I actually had a lot of. I'm sorry it took so long to get it to you. I had a lot of fun writing it.
Not a problem.
It was a great exercise for me to bring back all those memories and, try and tell some funny stories, and, which is like the opening paragraph: cover your wallet and cover your ass.
It's a great line.
All true. Welcome to the movie business. So.
Yep. That's the name of your book.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our conversation there. It's great to talk to someone who really, had their boots on the ground in this film's production. It's very likely that Justin and I, depending on the success of this book, that we'll go back to his Empire book and make an updated version with a new cover designed by Pete, who's done this Jedi cover, and bring it in line with the things we've got in this book. So interviews, maybe some diaries. Jim's talking about maybe being involved with us again. I've got my interviews with Nilo that I could put in there, with Paul Hirsch. And we also talked about maybe doing one for the Star Wars 50th anniversary. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could get Lucasfilm on board with this idea, now that we've proved that we can put something together that's pretty compelling, just from the two of us. I'll be back in the first week of June with the first of 2 episodes for that month, as usual. The first will be my conversation with composer of Battlestar Galactica and Knight Rider, amongst many, many others, Stu Phillips, a fantastic 94-year-old man who I chatted to a couple of weeks ago. You're going to enjoy that one. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you can do so again for the next episode of the Filmumentaries podcast.